Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Matrix Live Season 4 episode. I have no idea whatsoever where we're doing a special, almost Canadian, given that I'm not Canadian, but Uhoreg and Travis are. Or shall I call you Hubert? Hubert.
Hubert's fine.
Okay, I shall DC as a cipher you back into the real world. Yeah, because basically we've got all sorts of folk in the office this week after the funding announcement for New Vector. I guess it was 10 days ago now or so. Last week
Last
possibly.
week.
Last
Yeah.
Friday. God,
Yeah.
time flies when you're having fun. We got everybody in the same place, and so Travis and Hubert are over with us, and thought it'd be nice to do a Matrix live because I don't think we've ever had you live on the show before.
Don't think
No, I
so.
don't think so.
We've done calls at points over the years, but it's so much better, obviously, to be doing it from within our beautiful goldfish bowl here. Hopefully, the audio quality is just about making sense. So, yeah, I don't know what we should talk about really. I guess the obvious thing that people will be expecting us to talk about is the funding. Um, what should we say about that? New Vector has more money in order to keep working on Matrix. This is probably a good thing. Yeah.
So far, yeah.
Any thoughts, Travis, on the whole funding scenarios? Any concerns? Anything about VCs or whatever that might be interesting to talk about?
uh,
No pressure.
yeah, they don't seem evil when we met them, so we uh, we managed to show them what we're working on, and they were great.
Yeah, so far, well, obviously we didn't get into bed with investors who we thought were evil, and in fact, so far they've been entirely on the right page. Also, kind of still the honeymoon period, but we're hoping that things will continue on this trajectory. You have any thoughts, Hubert, on what you've
No.
seen?
Well, I didn't get a chance to meet them in person, but from what I've heard, they seem good. They seem like they understand what we're about. So
Well, the idea last week actually for Matrix Live was to go and get Joss, who's the lead investor for Notion, on Matrix Live and sit down and chat with him. But we completely ran out of time on the Friday when he was in the office to do that. I think in fact, he's in town on Wednesday again. So next week I'll try to grab him whilst he's around and have that conversation, and we can use it for next week's Matrix Live. But yeah, basically, long story short, we have more money, which is going to help expand the team at New Vector, who spend their lives going and working on Matrix, even more so, with the main priorities being around ops, going and trying to make sure that Matrix.org server works somewhat more reliably than it has been over the last couple of weeks, and also all of the modular hosted home server stuff, expanding that up. Also, around moderation, there's more to be said about that in future, but basically making sure we have kick-ass moderation tools for making sure that people have a decent experience on Matrix and they don't get hit with spam or abuse. And also going to be putting more manpower onto Riot Mobile because both Riot iOS and Riot X have been suffering quite a lot in terms of not enough people working on them. We just met up with the French team this week, and there's basically 1.5 people working on iOS, and Riot X has got more folks, but then they're distracted by also having to keep Riot Android going, etc. So we're trying to find more people who we can pay to go and work on that, which would be good too. We also saw a really cool preview of Riot X on iOS. Not sure if I'm allowed to talk about that, but it's so cool. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
it's a lot faster.
yeah, it's a lot faster, but it was also like 200 lines of code written in Swift UI on top of the existing SDK. And if anybody knows what Swift UI is, it's this really nice bit of tech that has come out of the last iteration of the Mac developer ecosystem, which is giving you primitives in Swift for doing front end design, but it runs on iOS and macOS, tvOS, watchOS. So it's literally write once, run everywhere in Swift, declarative, DSL for doing UI design. No more interface builder, no more zibs, no more XML, no more next step stuff. Honestly, it's basically a whole new paradigm, and we have a proof of concept of iOS doing that. Anyway, I am waffling. Should we talk about you guys a bit? Hubert, what have you been doing?
I've been working on cross-signing, which is basically making sure that you don't have to verify all of another person's devices with all of your devices. So that will make end-to-end encryption a lot easier for people to use.
Yep, it's looking super, super exciting. I'm sure people will have seen the videos a couple of months back that Hubert put together of the test rig as a really ugly but functional example of how cross-signing the devices would work. And we got a bit stuck, honestly, getting it implemented in Riot with all the privacy work that basically occupied the front end, a lot of the front end team for a while. But oops, it crashed. So we were saying, what were we saying? Something to do with cross-signing Riot UI work hadn't got stuck behind privacy work, but now it's moving again as of today, or in practice probably Monday. But all of that work will be landing. Well, and what's the back end side looking at right now?
So about half of the Synapse side has just landed in Synapse Develop today, and I have so there's 2 PRs left, and then one of them is probably going to go back into review shortly after this video, and then will just be the federation part left.
Very cool. So the 4 PRs in question were those DMs, using DMs for verification?
No, DMs for verification is only on the JS SDK side.
Oh, okay. Cool. Does it need changes on the server side?
No,
cool.
No server side changes. The 4 PRs for cross-signing in Synapse were uploading and downloading your cross-signing keys, uploading signatures.
Sorry for putting you on the spot. You did say they just merged.
I'm drawing a blank on the third one.
It can't have been important.
And the fourth one is
Federation. Right. Yeah, it doesn't matter what the third one is, but basically it's coming together, which is honestly just in time. We've been getting a lot more unhappiness from people, like people cancelling servers and things because they don't have, because of the experience on cross-signing. And certainly whenever I meet a parity employee, I'm worried they're going to kill me because they spend their lives manually cross-signing, not manually cross-signing, manually signing, not cross-signing their keys to verify each other. So this should be quite revolutionary. We've got all of NAD's UX design around it, which I think we've spoken about in the past, but it has done another iteration. It's starting to look really pretty as part of switching from using Sketch and going into Figma. So yeah, watch this space. It is our number one thing to do on Riot in the coming months, with the exception of improving first-time user experience, but that's a whole separate project. So what have you been up to, Travis?
Mostly spec and trying to figure out what integration managers are.
Uh-huh.
On the integration manager side, it's mostly just figuring out what they do, how they interact with Riot, how they don't interact with Riot, and also trying to help the mobile team through the same problems.
And the integration manager work is related to the privacy sprint, presumably?
Yeah, so in Riot Web we implemented the ability to change your integration manager, and then the mobile teams were trying to figure out how that can possibly work, and also trying to figure out what disconnecting from an integration manager means, and there's still a lot of ongoing discussions about that.
So when we spoke to the mobile team this week, There was some fairly strong feedback that, oh my god, this is too complicated and this is a mess. And it's one of these conversations where, hey, why don't we have a nice happy think about integration managers, kind of ended up in being a where did it all go wrong conversation. I mean, were there any conclusions from that? Or are we just going to keep the model as it is, or is there a secret plan to do something more?
Well, Right Web had a similar conversation about, what do integration managers do, and we came to roughly the same conclusions. It's all very complicated. Where did it go wrong? So far, we're not changing how they work, but it is a thing where about a third of the integration manager MSCs are actually available. The other sort of 2/3 are still sitting on a giant text file on my computer all the way back in Canada. So
fair enough. Ironically, whilst you were having that conversation, I got a ping from Keegan, who wrote all of the integration manager concept in the first place in terms of where it all went wrong. And he was asking how you were doing and saying congrats from the funding and that sort of thing. And it might be vaguely interesting. In fact, we should have gone and got him round whilst everybody was in the same place. It might have been amusing to go and pick his brains for thoughts on this. But I'll go and talk to him at some point this week and see what he has to say about it. And I guess we should say that all of us on the spec core team, with the exception of poor Kitsune, who is stranded in Japan, presumably battling typhoons, had the opportunity to work on a bunch of Matrix spec core team things, specifically MSC
2324, I think.
2324 rings a bell, yeah. 2324, which is our attempt to finally clarify the spec process around when it's safe to ship unstable features. Now, this is a comedy thing that we've got into a massive a massive point of contention within the team in terms of what the very precise processes are in terms of getting rid of develop prefixes, getting rid of unstable prefixes, when you should use m dot, when you should use org dot matrix, and all these sort of things, which feel very existential and significant to the spec core team. And then when we went and spoke to the rest of the new Vector folks about it, at least, I think I got the impression that the reaction was a little bit, what? As in, you guys have a process? That's nice, and why are you getting so upset about this? But I think we do have, honestly, it is really important to be super clear on what prefixes we should be using for our APIs. And I think we went through it all en masse and we got to a conclusion, which I think everybody agrees on, and has now been written up in this MSC by Travis last night, today, or
a little bit of both, yeah. Should all be there. We took a photo of it and everything, so
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Should we actually try to go through the 8 stages, or is this going to just end up with us having a fight? You're not allowed to cheat. Don't cheat. You can't possibly cheat. We've got to do this from memory because it's so obviously correct that if we reinvent it from scratch right now, we're going to get the same result. So first of all, we have an idea.
Yeah. Step 1, idea.
Light bulb. Bing. Step 2.
Which is concurrent with other steps.
Yeah.
You can choose to implement it. And then here's where all the bullet points come in.
Right. So I guess the key point is that you can implement your idea, obviously, at any point. And the question is, depending on when you implement it, is it part of the spec? And do you call it like m dot, what should we use? Like custom emoji or something? Or what amazing feature? Push to talk.
Push to talk, sure.
Okay, so if you're implementing push to talk in Matrix, do you do it as m dot push to talk or org dot matrix push to talk?
Well, if you're okay with donating it to the foundation, then you would use org.matrix. If you are doing it on your own, you would use, say, im.vector or com.example. But yeah, you don't use m dot, which is the critical point there. Cool.
So you go and implement it on, so I guess you use org.matrix, say, for us, with our Matrix Foundation hats on, and almost everything that NewVector does is donated to the foundation, hence using org.matrix. And I guess if a URL prefix is...
For the server side, use the /unstable.
And except we're extending /unstable to also have a vendor prefix or suffix effectively in it, so it would be /unstable /org.matrix and then /push to talk or whatever the actual API is that we've implemented. Okay, so we do that. What other things do we have on step 2?
So you have your unstable feature flag, you have your endpoint. I think, yeah, everything else is just vendor prefix everything. So all of your event types, all of your what would normally be your m dot whatever flags in, say, API responses or requests.
There is the important thing that we're changing the endpoints so that the unstable ones no longer inherit from the stable ones. So previously you'd have like /r0/login or something, and then if you went to /unstable/login, you would automatically get all the things which login already did from r0, which is just confusing. I mean, it was a weird hack in the first place, and we didn't really think it through. Whereas now it's just a little endpoint off on its own. So /unstable/org.matrix might happen to have a push to talk in it, but that doesn't mean that it also has a push send message or whatever.
So if you do that, then you're responsible for making sure that your implementation doesn't break if those endpoints or whatever disappear.
Yeah, and that's a critical thing that we haven't spelled out before, that if you do go and start implementing these unstable things, first of all, I guess the most important thing is that you can ship it at any time. No matter what the app or server is, there is nothing stopping you going and slapping on some random, basically vendor prefixed functionality, as long as you make sure that the clients don't break or the servers don't break when it disappears. So basically, people should not be depending on it. As a matter of course, they should be detecting it somehow and phoning back. And the way in which you might want to detect it, unless there's an easier way, is the vendor-specific custom capabilities in the /versions API on the CS API. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Custom, what's it called? Unstable features in /versions. So you pull the CS API for /versions and it says, hello, this server can do an org.matrix.push to talk. And then you as a client know that you can go wild exposing push to talk functionality that implements that particular experimental MSC. And if that feature goes away, then you shouldn't be showing it anymore on the client.
Yeah, and you should be able to fall back gracefully if it was previously enabled.
Yep.
That's more of a thing for, say, login or registration if that ever changes.
Yes.
Then you need to be able to still log in just fine. And yeah, I believe we have a general rough idea of to add a similar thing to /versions to the other APIs, because this whole process applies to all of the 5 areas of the spec.
Yeah, we will need an equivalent one, although so far it really has only hit us on the CS API. And often you can figure it out by like, does this API 404? So then it probably isn't implemented, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's what we've been doing on the server side.
Yeah, it's just a little bit more explicit and nice to have it, to actually explicitly say what prefixed feature you're implementing. Okay, so what else do we have on this?
So you need to write an MSC.
Well, that's step 3,
yep.
Which is in parallel.
Yep, so you can write the MSC written in parallel with that. And then for the MSC to enter FCP, so final call for proposal, presumably to merge it, we need to have evidence that your MSC exists, will work. And historically, that was explicitly asking for an implementation. Now it's a little bit more ambiguous in that you need evidence of some kind, which could be an implementation, but it could also, I guess, be a mathematical proof or
if the MSC is small enough, it could be the MSC itself of just like, oh, this is obviously going to work. It's a 5-line change.
Self-evidence thing, rather than having actually had to push it out. And this is kind of nice because it means that you don't need to waste time shipping a vendor prefixed implementation onto the public matrix network to demonstrate that it works. It gives a bit more flexibility, and I don't like rules, despite conversations about 8-point MSC 2324s, and so flexibility for the win. Step 5.
That's a good question.
Should we actually start cheating at this point?
Yes.
It's fun to literally rework it all out from first principles again.
Yeah, I'm just bringing it up now.
Let's see,
all of the comments, because luckily it has been reviewed. So let's see here. Step 4. Yep, that was the FCP. Step 5 is FCP has gone through, and then the MSC lands. Critically, it is not merged; it is just landed, because merged is a different state. Then we write a spec PR to incorporate all of this stuff into Matrix, and then step 7 is when a release happens. So also at step 7 is where if you didn't do step 2, you can basically wait for this. So for the people that don't want to take on all of the technical debt, or don't want to, or can't take on the technical debt, they can wait until step 7, because this process is really mostly in place for the implementations that want to move a little bit faster than that.
And then finally, step 8, we have the fact that as soon as it hits the spec, people should be implementing it. Obviously, we want people to implement against the most recent version of Matrix. But if 2 months have gone by and they still haven't implemented it, that's the point that we start to yell, where we is all of us. So any implementer who is implementing against, or who is integrating against some other implementation, if that implementation is more than 2 months stale, then that's the point that they get to start banging on the door and saying, hey, you are missing the whole point, and it's look at the sign on the wall that says that you should actually keep up with the spec, which we didn't have before. Take 3, that time the computer just went to sleep. Oh God, where were we? So yeah, step 8, 2 months, and that's it. And no, talking it through like that, it kind of sounds like common sense.
Yeah, and like the transition period for step 8 is a little bit difficult sometimes, because like the implementation still has to handle the unstable feature flag disappearing, and it's supposed to look for the new spec version. So that's all that sort of 2 months is for, is to say, hey, you should be looking for the new spec version because Synapse is going to rip it out, for instance. Or
in fact, we should probably, I think that's missing at the moment in terms of saying explicitly that after the 2 months, it's completely legitimate for implementations to remove the unstable flag. And yeah, the older instances will just fall back to whatever crap they had before that unstable flag existed, and the newer ones will go and use the new stable prefix. So basically the whole thing is a very elaborate dance, or not even very elaborate, it's just a dance to try to stop people being stuck on unstable prefixes forever, as Riot is infamously bad at doing. I think that even now Riot Web is using unstable prefixes.
Yeah, key backup is still in the MSC review process.
Well, that's because that one hasn't been released though, right? So that's correct.
Right, but I don't believe it has an unstable feature flag either. It's like the legacy of the legacy of the legacy process.
Yeah, because key backup was started before we had unstable feature flags.
I think even before we had a core team, maybe, or at least an MSC process, possibly around that time.
I don't know, but it depends on when you start. I think I implemented the first version of it, didn't I? And that was like 2 years ago now. So yeah, it was a long time ago. Yeah, probably least said the better on the key backup lifetime. But I think this should work. Hopefully, if you haven't like killed yourself in boredom and listening to us talking about spec process, meta process by now, and you have thoughts about this, and let us know whether it sounds sensible, or even better, go to MSC 2324 to let your voice be known before it gets FTP'd and merged forever into the proposals process. But I'm really glad that we got alignment on it, because everybody had slightly different thoughts. And in fact, the whole thing came out of the privacy process, where I got freaked out that the privacy project was taking ages, and that people were saying, oh, but we have to wait for this MSC to land before we can ship anything at all. And I was saying, but hang on, surely we should be able to ship at any point, and it can be unstable, it can be experimental, and then we can migrate over to it. However, it turned out that was a really good example for the edge case of, if you don't want to, or critically, if you can't take on the technical debt of the backwards compatibility of the change, then you probably do want to not ship it and instead wait for the spec to merge and then ship it, as long as there is proof that it's actually going to work once it ships. And because we were changing basically how authentication works, full stop, for a whole bunch of the system, you can't very easily roll it in and then roll it out again, and this person has consented to the GDPR flow and this person hasn't, and keep toggling on and off. I mean, we probably could have, but it would have made it even harder to get right. And so in the end, I was completely wrong, whilst going and screaming at everybody saying, please just ship it, ignore the MSC. And here we've actually gone and codified why I was wrong and what you should have done instead, whilst hopefully speeding it up for everybody else. So long story short, if you hear somebody saying, we can't possibly ship this to users because it hasn't passed MSC, 99% of the time they're wrong and I'm right, apart from the 1% when you're dealing with GDPR crap, in which case I'm wrong and everyone else is right.
Even then, it's still too complicated to know who's right.
Yeah, but I think this helps us a lot with a simple 8-point process. We should go and post the comedy whiteboard that we have, at least of what this looked like before it turned into an MSC. Anyway, any more for any more?
No, I think that's it.
Cool, thanks guys for coming on the show in person. It's been fantastic to have you hanging around with the wider team. Good luck in your journeys back to Canada tomorrow, I guess, both.
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks. Good luck with cross-signing Go Live, Hubert. And good luck drowning in MSCs for the rest of your life, Travis.
That's my daily job, yeah.
Cool. Have a good week, everybody. Thanks for flying, Matrix. Bye.